All right, let's dive into the fascinating world of reading people. Today, we're going deep with Reading People by Patrick King.
It's really like a guide to understanding, what makes people tick.
Yeah, it's about like going beyond those surface level interactions,
Right.
and getting to the why behind people's actions. It's like unlocking a secret code.
Absolutely. It can really help you in navigating relationships and social situations with just a whole new level of awareness.
Exactly. Now, the book starts off with this idea that every action, every choice comes from some hidden motivation. But like, how do we even begin to unravel those motivations? It seems kind of tricky.
Well, the book digs into 3 key psychological concepts.
Okay.
And I think let's start with the shadow self.
Okay, shadow self. What's that all about?
Basically, it's those parts of ourselves that we kind of keep hidden, even from ourselves. Those traits, desires that we consider maybe unacceptable or embarrassing.
So it's like our dark side.
Kinda. It's more like those aspects of ourselves we don't want to acknowledge.
Makes sense. The book gives that example of the straight-A student who suddenly rebels.
Right.
Is that their shadow self emerging?
Yeah, that's a great example. It's like we build up this image of who we should be, right? But those hidden aspects, they're still there.
Like lurking beneath the surface.
Exactly. And sometimes they come out in unexpected ways.
I'm starting to see how understanding this could be really helpful.
Yeah.
If we can recognize that everyone has this shadow side, it helps us make sense of behavior that seems out of character.
Exactly.
But I mean, if everyone has a shadow self, how do we know when it's like actually influencing someone's behavior,
That's a great question. And it really gets to the heart of why understanding the shadow self is so important.
Okay.
It's not about excusing bad behavior, but it can help us approach situations with more compassion, maybe even, prevent misunderstandings.
So instead of jumping to conclusions, we kind of pause and consider what might be going on beneath the surface.
Exactly. It allows us to ask, is this action really who they are, or is it their shadow self expressing itself?
Oh, that's a good point. Okay, so we've got the shadow self lurking in the background.
Right.
The book also talks about the inner child. What's that all about?
Think back to your childhood. Those experiences, especially the difficult ones, they can shape, how we react as adults. Sometimes, those old wounds, they resurface.
Yeah, I could see that. Like, have you ever noticed someone who overreacts to something?
Right.
Like really small.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like their inner child is taking over.
Exactly. It's like their past is intruding on the present moment.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
The book shares that example of a colleague breaking down in tears after minor criticism.
Right.
It turned out they had a history of being bullied.
Yeah.
And that past experience, it just colored their reaction.
It happens all the time.
It's a good reminder that sometimes people's reactions aren't actually about us.
Yeah.
It's their past experiences coming up.
Yeah.
So don't take things personally.
Exactly. Instead of getting defensive or taking it as a personal attack, try to see it through the lens of their past.
Okay. So extending empathy, recognizing that everyone's carrying around their own unique set of experiences, that's really helpful. All right, so we've talked about the shadow self, the inner child.
Right.
The book also mentions Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how does this classic theory play into reading people?
Well, you remember the pyramid, right?
Yeah. Basic needs at the bottom, self-actualization at the top.
Exactly. But how often do you think about where someone might be on that pyramid when you're interacting with them?
Honestly, not very often.
Yeah, it's easy to forget. But let's say you sense that someone's constantly seeking approval. They might be stuck on that belonging level.
Oh, interesting.
Knowing that can help you tailor your communication to meet their needs. Okay.
Or imagine someone who's driven to make a difference. They're likely operating from that self-actualization level. So your approach, it would need to acknowledge and support that drive.
So understanding where someone is on that hierarchy can really inform how we interact with them.
Absolutely.
Like a cheat sheet for figuring out what makes them tick.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so we've covered these 3 powerful concepts: the shadow self, the inner child, Maslow's hierarchy. We're starting to get a glimpse into what's happening beneath the surface.
Yeah.
But how do we actually read these things in real time.
That's where the magic of body language comes in.
Oh, okay. Body language. So much to uncover there.
Right. It's a whole conversation happening without a single word.
Like a secret language.
Exactly.
I'm ready to decode it.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've got to learn to read these signs. Our bodies are like walking, talking billboards, right?
Yeah, exactly. Broadcasting all sorts of information.
But how do we learn to read them? What are we looking for? Well, the book talks about these things called micro-expressions.
Okay, micro-expressions.
Basically, they're these really quick facial expressions, fleeting. They can reveal someone's true emotions.
So even if they're trying to hide them?
Exactly. Like their true feelings are trying to break through, even just for a second.
Oh, yeah.
Sneaky.
Right. The book gives this example. Imagine someone's forcing a smile.
Okay, yeah.
You might notice a slight tightening of the lips or maybe a lack of crinkles around the eyes.
Huh. Those are the signs of genuine happiness.
Yeah, those little crinkles are hard to fake.
So even if someone's words are saying one thing, their micro-expressions might tell a totally different story.
Exactly. It's like a secret language.
Wow, that's incredible. So we've got to pay attention to the subtle facial cues. But it's not just the face, right?
No, not at all. The whole body's involved.
Oh, right, right.
Have you ever noticed how someone's posture changes
Yeah.
when they're feeling confident versus, insecure? Yeah. Or like their gestures get more animated when they're excited about something.
Exactly. It's about becoming aware of all those nonverbal signals.
So it's about looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah. How they carry themselves, how they move, how they interact with their surroundings.
It's all connected.
It is. The book even talks about this thing called mirroring.
Mirroring. What's that?
It's when we subconsciously mimic someone's body language.
Oh, like when you're talking to someone and you find yourself copying their posture.
Yes, or their gestures.
I do that all the time.
It's a way of building rapport.
Oh, so it's a good sign if someone is mirroring me.
It can be. It often means you're connecting with that person.
Makes sense. Building trust, understanding. But what about when you get the feeling that someone's not being truthful?
Ah, yes. The age-old question.
Are there any body language clues that can tip us off to deception?
Well, the book actually dedicates a whole section to spotting deception.
Really? Okay, what does it say?
Well, first it busts some common myths.
Oh, like what?
Like, shifty eyes or nervous tics being a sure sign of lying.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Turns out, it's not that simple.
Oh.
Context matters a lot. And motivation. What might seem suspicious in one situation could be totally normal in another.
That's true. So there's no foolproof way to spot a liar.
Well, not just based on one thing. The book says you have to consider the person's baseline behavior.
Baseline behavior, what's that?
Basically, it's how they normally act. So you can spot any deviations.
Oh. So like you need to know they're normal to see when they're acting different.
Exactly. It's those deviations that can be really telling.
Yeah.
Like, let's say you know someone who's usually super calm, but suddenly they're fidgeting, avoiding eye contact, their voice gets higher.
Interesting. So that could be a sign something's up.
It could mean they're feeling anxious, uncomfortable, maybe they're not being truthful.
That makes sense. So follow the deviations.
Yeah, those shifts in behavior can be like clues.
Little clues leading us to the truth. So besides observing those cues, what else does the book say about uncovering lies?
Well, it suggests a few strategies. One is strategic conversation.
Strategic conversation. Sounds intense.
It's about asking the right questions in the right way.
Okay.
Instead of accusing someone directly, which can make them defensive,
Right.
you use open-ended questions to gently probe. Look for inconsistencies in their story.
Oh, interesting. So you're not confronting them head on. You're kind of circling around, seeing what they reveal.
Exactly. Another technique is the element of surprise.
Surprise.
Yeah, it's much harder to lie when you're caught off guard.
Oh, that makes sense.
So you could throw in an unexpected question or suddenly change the topic.
Ooh, sneaky.
And then watch for signs of nervousness or changes in their story.
So throw them off balance, see what happens.
Exactly. And then there's cognitive overload.
Cognitive overload. Now that one I remember from our outline, but I'm not sure how it works.
Basically, it's based on the idea that lying takes effort.
It takes mental energy to create and maintain a lie.
Oh, it's tiring to lie.
In a way, yes. So the idea is to overload their cognitive processes.
Okay, how do you do that?
You could introduce false information, ask lots of detailed questions, or keep pressing on inconsistencies.
Oh, so you're basically making their brain work overtime.
Exactly. And eventually the truth might slip out.
Clever. So we've got strategic conversations, surprise, and cognitive overload. These are great tools for spotting deception. But all this talk about lies is making me wonder, are we constantly surrounded by liars?
Maybe not constantly, but we do encounter deception more often than we realize.
That's true. So should we be suspicious of everyone?
No, not at all. It's not about being paranoid. It's about increasing our awareness, becoming more attuned to the subtle ways people communicate.
I like that. So not about becoming a lie detector, but just becoming a better observer.
Exactly. Shifting from autopilot to active observation. I can do that. Now, besides all this lie detecting stuff, there's another aspect of reading people that I'm really fascinated by.
What's that?
Personality. Like, why are some people so outgoing while others are so reserved? Why do some thrive in chaos while others crave order?
Those are great questions.
It's like everyone has their own unique way of being in the world.
They do. And the book dives into some popular frameworks for understanding personality.
Oh, cool. Like what?
Well, it starts with the Big Five.
The Big Five. Okay. I've heard of that, but I'm not sure I totally get it. Can you break it down for me?
Of course. So the Big Five, it breaks down personality into 5 core dimensions.
Okay, 5 dimensions.
Openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism.
Yeah, 5 big words.
We can take them one by one.
All right, let's do it. Starting with openness to experience. What's that all about?
Openness to experience is about how curious and imaginative you are.
Mm-hmm.
People high in openness, they tend to be adventurous, creative, open to new ideas.
So someone who loves traveling to exotic places, trying new things.
Exactly. They love exploring different cultures, challenging their own beliefs.
While someone who prefers sticking to their routines, familiar surroundings, would probably be lower in openness.
Right. They tend to be more traditional, practical.
Okay, that makes sense. What about conscientiousness?
Conscientiousness is all about organization, responsibility, discipline.
So someone who's always on time, meets deadlines, follows through on commitments.
Yes, they would score high in conscientiousness.
And someone who's more spontaneous, maybe a little disorganized.
They'd likely be lower in conscientiousness.
Got it. Okay, what about extroversion? I think I know what that means, but tell me more.
Extroversion is how outgoing and sociable you are. Extroverts get energized by being around other people. They love parties, social gatherings.
Right. And introverts are the opposite. They prefer quieter environments, time alone.
Exactly, but it's a spectrum, right?
Oh, right. Not just extrovert, introvert.
Yeah.
You could be somewhere in between.
Exactly, and it's not the same as being shy or outgoing. You can be a shy extrovert.
Oh, yeah. Like you need that social interaction, but you also get drained by it.
Exactly. It's about where you get your energy from.
Okay, what's next?
Agreeableness. This one measures how cooperative and empathetic you are.
So someone who's always willing to help others puts others' needs before their own.
Yeah, they would be high in agreeableness. They're often described as warm, friendly, trusting.
And someone who's more assertive, maybe a little skeptical.
They might be lower in agreeableness. They're not necessarily unkind, but they're less likely to put others first.
Okay, that makes sense. Last one.
Neuroticism.
Neuroticism. Okay, that sounds kind of negative.
It's not necessarily negative. It just measures how prone you are to negative emotions like anxiety, worry, sadness.
Oh, okay. So someone who's easily stressed, overthinks things, worries a lot.
They would likely score high in neuroticism.
They're more emotionally sensitive, reactive.
Exactly. And people low in neuroticism, they tend to be more emotionally stable.
Okay, so we've got these 5 dimensions. Openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. By understanding where someone falls on each one, we can get a clearer picture of their personality.
Absolutely. And we can understand why they react the way they do, maybe even predict how they might behave.
This is amazing. I'm already trying to analyze myself based on these dimensions.
It's fun, right?
It is. But you mentioned other personality frameworks too.
Oh, right. There's the MBTI and Kiersey's temperaments.
Okay, let's hear about those. Starting with the MBTI.
Okay, the MBTI, or Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, it's probably the most well-known.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
It's based on the work of Carl Jung, and it looks at 4 key dichotomies.
Dichotomies, what are those?
It's like a pair of opposites. So extroversion versus introversion.
Like we talked about that one.
Then there's sensing versus intuition, thinking versus feeling, and judging versus perceiving.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. What's sensing versus intuition?
Sensing is about how you gather information about the world. People who prefer sensing, they focus on concrete facts, details. They trust their 5 senses, prefer practical experiences.
So someone who loves puzzles, enjoys analyzing data, learns by doing.
Yeah, they would probably prefer sensing. While someone who's more imaginative, enjoys brainstorming, sees the bigger picture, they might prefer intuition.
Ah, interesting. So it's about how you process information.
Exactly. Now, thinking versus feeling.
I'm guessing this is about how you make decisions.
You got it. People who prefer thinking, they base their decisions on logic, objective analysis, weighing the pros and cons.
It's very analytical, data-driven.
Right. People who prefer feeling, they prioritize values and empathy. They consider the impact on others, strive for harmony.
So they're more heart-centered, focused on relationships and emotions.
Exactly. And then judging versus perceiving.
This one sounds kind of judgmental.
It's not about being judgmental in a negative way. It's about how you approach the outside world. People who prefer judging, they like structure, organization, they make plans, stick to schedules, they like control.
They're the planners, the list makers.
Yes. And people who prefer perceiving, they're more adaptable, spontaneous, they go with the flow.
The free spirits, the ones who are open to new experiences.
Exactly. So you've got these 4 dichotomies, and each person has a preference for one side or the other.
Okay, and these preferences combine to make different personality types.
Right. The MBTI combines them into 16 distinct personality types.
Whoa, 16. So each type is like a unique combination of those preferences.
Exactly. Like the ESTJ type, they're extroverted, sensing, thinking, judging.
ESTJ, okay.
They're often described as practical, organized, decisive leaders.
Yeah.
Then you have the INFP type.
INFP, what are they like?
They're introverted, intuitive, feeling, perceiving, more idealistic, empathetic, creative.
So different.
Right. But remember, the MBTI is just a framework. It's not about putting people in boxes.
Right, it's just a starting point for understanding. What about Kiersey's temperaments? I haven't heard of that one.
Kiersey's temperaments, it builds on the MBTI and groups people into 4 main temperaments.
Okay, for your temperament.
The guardian, the artisan, the idealist, and the rational.
Okay, tell me about them.
Guardians, they're responsible, reliable, practical. They value security, tradition.
The rock, the steady presence.
Exactly. Artisans, they're more spontaneous, adaptable, creative. They love expressing themselves freely, exploring new things.
The free spirits, the artists.
Yes. Then you have the idealists. They're driven by their values. They want to make the world a better place.
They sound amazing.
They are very empathetic, compassionate. And finally, the rationals. They're analytical, logical, independent thinkers. They value knowledge, competence.
They're the problem solvers, the innovators.
Exactly. So you have the guardians, the artisans, the idealists, and the rationals. Each one brings something unique.
Wow, this is fascinating. So many different ways to understand people's personalities. But it's not just about understanding the individual. Right.
There's also the situation.
The context, the environment, all of that.
Exactly.
Okay, so we need to consider both the person and the situation they're in.
Yeah, and that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, so we've explored personality types, learned about those micro expressions. We even dipped our toes into lie detection. It feels like we've got this toolkit for understanding people. But how do we actually use all of this?
Right. It's like we've been training for a marathon. Now it's time to actually run. And the best part is you can practice people reading anywhere, anytime.
Oh, I like that.
It's not about becoming like a human lie detector or profiling everyone you meet. It's about becoming a more astute observer.
So shifting from autopilot to active observation.
Exactly. Start paying attention to the people around you. Notice their body language, their communication style, the choices they make.
Okay, yeah, like really tuning in.
Yeah. Ask yourself, what's motivating them? What can I learn from observing them?
And it's okay if we don't always get it right.
Of course. It's a process. We're all learning.
The book talks about thin slicing. That's the ability to make accurate judgments based on limited information.
Right, that gut feeling you get when you meet someone new.
Like something feels off.
Exactly, like that intuitive sense that something's not quite right.
Makes sense.
The book has this example of a job interview. The candidate seemed perfect on paper, but the interviewer had this feeling like something wasn't right.
Interesting.
And it turns out their instincts were right.
Yeah.
There were some issues at the company the candidate had tried to downplay.
So their gut feeling was accurate.
It was. It's a great example of how intuition can be powerful. But thin slicing is just the first step.
Okay.
You need to follow up on those feelings, gather more data to confirm or refute your initial impressions.
So it's like a two-step process. First,
Yeah.
you get that feeling, and then you look for evidence.
Exactly. And the book gives us all these strategies for honing our observation skills. One of the most important is paying attention to everyday behaviors. How do people communicate? What are their word choices, their tone in emails, text messages?
Oh, interesting. Never thought about analyzing someone's emails for
That was
clues about their personality.
You'd be surprised. The book points out that excessive negativity can be a red flag.
Even if it's subtle.
Yeah, even if it's veiled.
Yeah.
It could signal underlying anxiety, stress, maybe even a pessimistic outlook. And then someone who uses more positive language, they might be more emotionally balanced.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So their language is like a window into their inner world.
Exactly. And then there's cold reading.
Cold reading, isn't that what psychics do?
Well, psychics use it, but it's not just about the paranormal. Cold reading is basically observing someone's appearance and surroundings to get insights into their personality and lifestyle.
Okay, I see. So like paying attention to their clothing, their home decor, the books they have.
Exactly. The book gives these examples, like someone who displays expensive art might be signaling wealth and status. Someone with shelves full of self-help books might be focused on personal growth.
So it's like those objects are telling a story about them.
Yeah. And don't forget their online presence. Social media, online activity, it can tell you a lot.
Oh yeah, that's true. Like someone who's always posting travel photos probably loves to explore.
Right. Someone sharing work-related articles might be more career-focused.
It's like putting together those digital breadcrumbs.
Exactly. We can use all this information to build a more complete picture of the person.
Wow, this is incredible. It's like we're becoming detectives of human nature. We've learned so much about reading people, personality types, micro-expressions, lie detection. It's amazing.
It is. And remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
So much more to explore.
Exactly. But I hope our listeners feel empowered to use these tools in their own lives.
I do too. It's like we've unlocked this secret code to understanding people. And it can make such a difference in our relationships, our communication, everything.
It can.
So to our listeners, what will you start noticing now? What hidden motivations will you uncover? The world is your laboratory, so go forth and observe. This has been an amazing deep dive.
It has. Thanks for joining us.